Godzilla Mine One.
So, Godzilla Minus One was one of those few movies when I walked out of the theater, I was absolutely amazed. I'm talking about on a level that I really haven't felt in a while. Now, I am a Godzilla fan, I will not lie, but I don't think Godzilla is the reason why it amazed me. For a movie with a $15 million budget, it puts to shame $200 million movies. The CGI is absolutely crisp and perfect. The sound design is on point. The cinematography is excellent, on point with Oppenheimer. This entire movie is on point with Oppenheimer as far as directing, writing, acting, special effects, sound design. This is an Oscar movie, in my opinion. Now, it deals with loss and grief and what life throws at you in the middle. While the human driven narrative keeps you enthralled while Godzilla is not on screen, when Godzilla is on screen, he is the king of the monsters. There's no doubt about that. There are no plot holes, no pacing problems. There isn't even one thing I can really say I don't like about this movie. We could have had a little more Godzilla. We definitely couldn't have had less. But more Godzilla is always a good thing, and I don't think it would have ruined the movie. All right, so we're going to get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, get out of your house, go watch it. It's a really, really good movie.
Wookie, you're so bad.
Now, I will say this. I went through the cast and production staff for this movie. You'll probably find some cool stuff in there. A bunch of them have worked on Kamen Rider stuff, anime, and a few other things. So if you're into that stuff, you may already know who some of these people are. Now, we do know the director has said that he wants to direct a Star Wars movie because Star Wars is what got him into filmmaking.
No! God, please, no!
Please, sir, stick to Godzilla and Japanese movies. Don't come to Hollywood. Now, there's a bit of Godzilla lore in this movie. We get to see a Godzillasaurus. Our main character, Kyochi, lands his kamikaze plane on a repair strip. Now, this is for repairing kamikaze planes, and that's it. It's not an airfield. Well, we find out that there's nothing wrong with his plane. He kind of just sissied out. And the mechanic tells him, says he doesn't blame him for not wanting to give his life for a losing war. Now, this is the final days of World War II that's about to end. Now, we see some dead deep sea fish floating in the water. This is a sign of Godzilla coming, and you will see more of this. Now, as night comes, the Godzillasaurus attacks, and it kind of reminds me in a way of Jurassic Park in a way, like he's like biting down and throwing guys around. I don't think he was as big as the Tyrannosaurus Rex in Jurassic Park, but he was pretty large. I mean, he was still stomping on dudes and wrecking havoc. It's a pretty interesting scene, pretty hectic, very intense. There's a thing they tell him to get in his plane and shoot the Godzilla because he has 20 millimeter guns, and 20 millimeter guns will kill anything, supposedly. He gets in his plane and locks up and is unable to fire his guns out of fear. Him and the mechanic are the only people left alive. And this plays in later on. But now, however, the war has ended. They're on the way home. He gets to his house, which is all is left is one room. His parents are dead. He talks to the neighbor, and she's mad at him because he didn't give himself for the war. Maybe her kids would still be alive if she did, which is pretty odd, but I can understand people in grief. So everybody he knows is dead. You see him in a market where a girl is being chased, and she hands him a baby and runs off. Well, he ends up meeting up with her again, and her and the baby end up staying there with her. The baby is an orphan. Both of their parents died in the bombings. Kyochi takes care of him, and time passes. Like I said, there is some stuff that shows him having nightmares and dealing with his PTSD. He gets a job retrieving mines, meets these guys. They play very heavily into the story. Now, as this time passes, we see the Bikini Atoll being bombed for the nuclear testing, and we see what looks like a Godzilla eye being regenerated. This plays in later, but so we see the birth of actual Godzilla. Now, we also see that there is these U.S. Navy ships being wrecked by this monster, which we know is Godzilla. Well, Kyochi's group gets sent out to one of these ships, and they're staring at the ship wondering what's going on as their partnership gets eaten by Godzilla, literally picked up out of the ocean in his mouth and slammed down. This is a very terrifying scene. In fact, Godzilla proceeds to chase them. Now, they're dropping mines at him. Nothing affects him. They drop one mine and it goes in his mouth, and Kyochi shoots it. Well, when this thing detonates, it rips a chunk out of Godzilla's head. Like you can see inside his head, the skin and bone is gone. He drops dead. And then you see the skin and the flesh and the meat regenerate, and he gets back up. This is terrifying. How are you supposed to fight this creature? I mean, we know you can't kill Godzilla anyways, but this gives you a good graphic to go along with. And not only does it regenerate, but it looks like scar tissue. It actually looks like he's been injured. Now, I think this is excellent because now when Godzilla is taking artillery fire from ships and tanks, it's not just bouncing off of him and not affecting him. It's actually taking chunks with it. He's actually taking damage, but he's regenerating it back, and you can actually physically see this going on. I think this is an excellent mechanic, an excellent optical effect, and it makes everything realer. That brings the terror to the surface. Godzilla is not someone you're rooting for in this movie like you are in the legendary films and stuff like that. He is a monster to destroy. So while this is going on, a destroyer shows up and starts shooting Godzilla. Like I said, chunks flying. And he dives under the water. Now, the underwater scenes of Godzilla are amazing. I think they're some of the best underwater CGI scenes I've ever seen in my life. It looks really, really amazing. Godzilla swims up to the ship, jumps up, starts to attack it. The ship is sideways pretty much in the air, and they turn all the guns on him and fire. This is another example of excellent cinematography and great CGI work. It looks excellent. It looks believable. It doesn't look gimmicky at all. Godzilla is wounded, drops into the ocean. Kyochi and them on their little wooden boats see the water start to glow blue, and you see the atomic breath come up through the ship, and it's like an atom bomb going off. I think this is the most devastating atomic breath we've ever seen. Well, and Kyochi blacks out. So when he wakes up, we start to get some anti-government sentiment here, because they're complaining that they know about Godzilla. The U.S. government and the Japanese government know about Godzilla, but they're not going to do anything about him coming to Japan because they're too scared to make a move because of Russia. Now, this is a mechanic based on history. I do like how they use historical things inside of these movies to make them work. That is a sign of a good writer. The guy that directed this, wrote this, I applaud you, sir. I am in awe of your work. Every line of dialogue in this movie has its place and is needed for a reason. And the foreshadowing done in this movie is not like in-your-face foreshadowing like some Disney products. Now, once Godzilla reaches land, all hell breaks loose. You literally see, if you look close enough, when he steps on people, there is a pink mist. This is what I mean by Godzilla is terrorizing. He puts fear into your body while you are watching this movie. He is a monster, which is what he is supposed to be. Now, he happens to attack the train with Noriko on it, which we'll get into that here in a little bit. And she manages to escape by jumping into the water after the train she's been bit in half. It's pretty crazy. And Kyochi shows up to help save her, but in the end, she saves him. So while Godzilla's traipsing through the street and destroying buildings, these tanks, which looks like it's in front of the Capitol building, starts shooting Godzilla. Well, he turns and we get the scene with the tail and his blades, how they come out and go back in, and then he shoots the blast. He puts his atomic breath out. And I can tell you this, I did not like the optics of that in the trailer. I'm like, why is it doing that? Well, and there's an entire mechanic system to the atomic breath that I think was very good. So for Godzilla to use that atomic breath, he has to literally hurt himself and is incapable of using it directly again, unlike when we see in Legendary's movies where he's just blast after blast after blast. Even in the older movies, he didn't use it as much as he did in the Legendary films, although he could use it to fly. It's kind of weird. When the atomic breath hits this Capitol building, we get another atomic bomb, and we get a blast wave off of that. We know how bombs work. There's a blast wave that comes off of it. Well, Noriko shoves Kyochi between two buildings as the blast wave hits, and she is blown away. She should be dead at that point. In fact, there's a funeral for her. No one should be able to survive that. Now, this is our main character's breaking point. She has been his rock and helped him deal with all of his stuff. So after her funeral, they're sitting there talking, and they're saying that there's a group of citizens that are going to go after Godzilla because they don't trust the government to get it done. This is very interesting, the way they break this down, the way they work it out. They bring up the fact that, our government wasn't very nice to our soldiers, bad tanks, kamikaze pilots, stuff like that. And they talk about, if you don't want to do this, you do not have to. This is purely voluntarily. We are not forcing anyone. We are not our government. And I said, there's a lot of anti-government sentiment in this. I appreciate it. Not everyone likes everything the government does. That's the government's job in a way. But so they come up with this theory, and it kind of reminds me of the original Oxygen Destroyer, but it doesn't. So they want to use helium to sink him into the trench at 1,500 meters, and then use inflatables to bring him back to the surface, causing a massive compression and decompression, which we kind of know that about a sub that decompressed somewhere in the ocean. Trying to look at the Titanic, so that's all fresh in our minds. But not many things would be able to withstand that. So it sounds like a fair plan, but they have to find a way to lure Godzilla out to the trench. So Kyochi finds this rear prop-driven fighter plane. It's kind of weird looking. It's real, though. It is really a plane. It was meant to shoot down bombers. It was an experimental plane. It's kind of cool looking. Well, he has to get the mechanic from the island because they're going to kill Godzilla. Kind of makes sense. Feels like he owes him. So he gets the mechanic back, and they're building their Freon tanks and inflatables. It's not really a montage. It just plays out. So there's a scene where they're getting ready for all this, and you see this ship fly into this building. So this ship is towing a underwater speaker, playing Godzilla's screams, hoping he'll think it's another one of him to try to slow him down from coming ashore. Well, that ship's several miles out in the ocean, and he chucks that thing. It just goes to show his power. Like I said, he's very terrorizing. So Kyochi hits the plane. Now, it's been loaded with bombs. It's set up for a kamikaze run. Only him and the mechanic know this. So while they're out in the ocean, they've got him lured over the trench. They send out a dummy ship, and Godzilla uses his atomic breath. And this is where you get to see, the sides of his face is all burnt up from using the blast, and you understand, because they're like, all right, let's go. He can't use it for a little bit of time. Let's rock and roll. So they get him wrapped up in this mess, and he's getting ready to blast, and they drop him down 1,500 meters in the ocean. You see a little bit of him taking some damage, stuff like that. Then they pull him back up. Well, while they're pulling him back up, all the inflatables come to the surface. Godzilla's at 800 meters. So the two ships are pulling like hell, trying to get Godzilla up out of the water. And he's so heavy they can't. Well, in kind of a Rise of Skywalker moment, I hate talking about the movie, all these tugboats show up. All the people that decided they weren't going to take part have decided to come. And it's kind of comical seeing all these tugboats hooked to these two ships trying to pull Godzilla up. It's kind of comical, and it's kind of heartwarming at the same time. I thought it was pretty good. I got a slight chuckle out of it. Now, they get Godzilla to the surface, and I tell you what, they did some pretty good CGI here, because it's like his eyes are buggy. His skin looks all weird, like he's going through the decompression. Like, they really messed him up doing that, but they did not kill him. So as he's going for his atomic breath, Kyochi flies the plane directly into his mouth, and it explodes, removing the top portion of Godzilla's head. Now, this is very graphic. There's not blood spraying everywhere or anything, but you literally see Godzilla without the top half of his head. And the atomic breath that he was ready to spray everywhere just consumes his body, and he drops to the bottom of the ocean. Now, we do see that Kyochi ejected from the plane. It was equipped with an ejection seat. It was very rare for some Japanese planes. Now, we get back to land, and Kyochi gets a telegram that Noriko is alive. Now, this is a very touching scene. While he's headed to the hospital, we see the pieces of Godzilla regenerating, because, of course, you cannot kill Godzilla. This is Godzilla -1. The next one should be Godzilla. I completely understand we're always going to get a Godzilla movie. We all know you can't kill Godzilla. Godzilla has to come back. However, this is not the weird part. We're going to talk about some fan fiction theory crafting here in a minute. Once Kyochi reaches Noriko, she asked him if he was done fighting his war. He collapses into her arms crying. Now, one side of her face is bandaged up. She might be missing an eye. We don't know. She looks pretty rough. But she did have time to put her makeup on. It's the only thing I could see wrong in that scene. And the movie ends, and it zooms in on them hugging, and you see this thing. It looks like a tattoo on the side of her neck, but it's moving. It kind of looks like Godzilla's regeneration. It kind of doesn't. I have a fan theory that Godzilla was after her when he came on land. He literally bit the train she was on, and when she was on the ground, he was right behind her. So they would turn, and he would turn. He was chasing her, whether we knew it or not. I think it's a pretty good idea. I mean, I don't think she got G cells from the blast. She may have. And for those of you that are not Godzilla fans, those are the cells that Godzilla is made out of. G cells. So let me know what you think down below about that. I think it's pretty interesting. I supremely think that's how it's going to go. There's something about her. Maybe she's tied to Mothra. Who knows? Maybe she was exposed to something about the same time. Well, no, she would have had to have been exposed to it before the Bikini Atoll testing, because that's when Godzilla was born, and she was with Kyochi at that point. But overall, I think this is the perfect Godzilla movie. It could have used more Godzilla, but who doesn't need more Godzilla? Everyone does. Less Godzilla would not have worked. I think they took their time and crafted an excellent movie. I think this could be movie of the year. This is up there with Oppenheimer with me as far as movie quality. Now, I am a Godzilla fan, so I am biased. If you think differently, tell me down below. But I give this movie a 10 out of 10. Like I said, everything was on point. There was no holes in the plot. There was no boring dialogue. Everything had a purpose. You were well informed. You didn't have to make anything up in your head, other than like that little theory crafting part right there, which we don't know about that. That's the next movie, hopefully. But I didn't have to justify to myself why a certain thing worked and a certain thing didn't. I like the part where the community as a whole came together to defeat Godzilla. It was not the military. It was a bunch of men and women working together. It was a very good message. And I think that's a lot of what the problem is now. We don't have a good message. It's either a bad message or a political message or no message at all. This actually has a good message in the movie. We do see some humans go through some bad stuff, and I'm kind of glad I got to see post-World War II Japan as an American. I always wondered about it. Now, I'm sure it wasn't a one-to-one depiction or whatever, but it's an interesting thing for me to look at. I know we have Godzilla X Kong coming out. I've seen some of the toys for that. They don't look very good. Godzilla with pink spikes, no. But yeah, let me know what you think below. That's what I got. This is a 10 out of 10. I supremely enjoyed it. I think it's movie of the year. Let's get some more stuff like this instead of the boring stuff we're getting now. Y'all have a good one. Drop a like, comment, sub. You know how it works. Later.
Chewie, is that you?